Hi. So, I decided for my project that I definitely wanted to do something about zombies. Since I was young, my dad would always watch zombie movies, and that got Cade and I into that. And so now that's something that we all love to do together is watch zombie movies. And so I've always kind of wondered, what makes a zombie a zombie? Like, there are a lot of factors to it. So, we'll get into that. All right. So, first, we're going to make a few assumptions and establish ground rules. This zombie infection would come from a virus or a fungus. No zombies coming back from the grave. And so you wouldn't be able to see anyone that was dead. So all of these zombies are slow, like Night of the Living Dead and not Zombieland. These zombies lack high level thoughts, so they can't operate tools and they don't have memories. These zombies have an endless appetite, so they always want to feed. So pretty much every zombie movie ever made. These zombies are all angry. Again, like in all the movies. All right. So, first we're going to learn a little bit about the brain. The three main parts of the brain that would be impacted are the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. All right. So, the cerebrum is split into two parts, and so the left and the right hemisphere. And each half is split into four parts: the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital lobes. The frontal lobes also house rules for like social behavior besides what they already have. So, um, the frontal lobe is responsible for cognitive functions and voluntary movements. The parietal lobe is responsible for processing information about temperature, taste, touch, and movement. The temporal lobe is responsible for processing memories and giving them the sensation of it, like touch, taste, sound, and sight. Then the occipital lobe is responsible for sight. Next, let's learn about the cerebellum. It's also responsible for controlling muscle movements as well as coordination and balance. And yeah. And finally, the brainstem. The brainstem connects to the spinal cord and is really, really critical. Without um, It controls things like your heartbeat, eye movement, being able to swallow, blood pressure, and breathing. So it's all these things that we need to survive. A little bit about the different hemispheres of the brain. So as you already know, we have the left and the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere usually is like so the left hemisphere controls the movement of the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere controls the movements of the left side of the body. The left hemisphere also controls language, while the right hemisphere controls cognitive functions and already the left side of the body. Then there are things that require both halves of the brain. One of those is memory. Now, next is we're going to learn about the olfactory nerve. This goes from our nose directly to like the olfactory nerve leads directly to our brain, as you can see in this diagram. So here it goes. If a virus were to go in through the nose, it would go through the nerves and up into the brain. So one of the places that would be affected would be the ventromedial hypothalamus, the amygdala, and the frontal cortex. And as we know from this, psychopaths have a smaller amygdala, which I'll talk more about in a second. So, the ventromedial hypothalamus is responsible for telling you that you're full. So, if that were to be affected, that means that you would never have anything telling you that you weren't full, so you would just continue to eat and eat and eat. The amygdala is responsible for controlling emotions and memories. So, with like a damage to the amygdala, you wouldn't have any emotions, which is where psychopaths come in. Psychopaths really don't have emotions, and as you can see in the diagram, it's more lit up on the normal side versus the psychopath side because they don't have any receptors in their brain for the amygdala. And then we have the frontal cortex, which is responsible for problem solving, morality, and impulsive actions. And this would also impact the basal ganglia, which deals in motor coordination. So, in conclusion, without an actual zombie outbreak, scientists can never be sure what impact the virus would have on human brains. However, a person can assume that common brain issues and structure would be altered or shut down. So let's go back. We know that the cerebrum would definitely be affected, and the cerebellum would, as well as the brainstem, because with the cerebellum, muscle movements are different, and your coordination is kind of off. And we with stuff like in the cerebrum, the frontal lobe, which is responsible for voluntary movements and cognitive functions, would be affected, and the parietal lobe, with processing information about temperatures. I doubt that zombies would be able to really feel it. So if they were just walking towards a fire, to just um, as well as with t- taste, touch, and their movements. And the temporal lobe, which is responsible for processing memories, they wouldn't have their memories. They would just like if your family member were to be affected, they wouldn't have their memories of you. It would just be nothing. And um with the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the muscle movements and coordination and balance and everything, zombies could easily tip over. And then with the brainstem, things like the like breathing and heart rate, that would all be affected. I mean, I don't think that zombies need to breathe, so then zombies can't talk at all, so the left hemisphere would be affected, and all the cognitive function would just go away, and as well as with like your memory. The ventromedial hypothalamus would definitely be affected, because if you had nothing to tell you that you were full, you would just keep eating and eating and eating and eating. And then with the amygdala, if you don't feel any emotions for anything, then you don't really, you can't really tell difference about stuff. And yeah, so that would be like a real effect. Those would all be affected if there were to be a zombie virus. All right. Thank you for listening to my presentation.